Hey guys, in this episode, I'm going to take you through a suburb that has boomed over the last 6 months. There's still some opportunity left in this suburb, but I did an analysis on this about 6 months ago, and since then, the suburb's grown about 10 to 15% in value. I did this all on the basis of using data, using a particular formula that I've put together over the last decade. I use this both for my development sites, but then also when I'm looking at holding property for long-term cash flow. I look at this data set as well, along with other things, not just the data. So the suburb I'm going to be talking about, it is located in Perth. Don't just think you can go over to the Perth market because it's booming at the moment and expect that you're going to ride the capital growth wave. You need to know a bit more about buying property than just relying on somebody like myself to say that, hey, Perth is booming and I think it's going to be booming for the next 6 to 12 months. You've got to get in at not only the right time in the market, but also the right property in that market, because just because an area is undergoing a huge growth does not mean that you are going to get that same growth from your one property. So let's get straight into it. My name is Adam Panisi. I do these videos to help you buy property yourselves. I run a couple of educational programs as well if you do want to take your education to that next step in the property space. I've been involved in property investment and development for over a decade. I've bought and sold hundreds of properties over that time, and I'm currently actively developing a number of large-scale projects. So let's get straight into it. The area which I had navigated about 6 months ago, and I did this as part of one of my programs, using the data sets that were available. A lot of those come down to the supply demand in that particular suburb, as well as the growth experience in a past data set. So you can only see what suburbs have really started to grow because you're relying on past data. The data needs to catch up with the actual time and place of the transactions at that point in time. So Warnbro was a suburb that I analyzed, and I had a look at Warnbro, which you can see the median price now looks like it's about 426,000. This data set is a little bit old, so it's experienced well over 10% growth in the last 6 months. If you had got in to this suburb 6 months ago, you would have, on a typical house, experienced a 10% growth on that $400,000. So you would have made about $40,000 in equity just by buying a run-of-the-mill home. So keep that in mind. You know, that sounds pretty good. If you put down a 10 or 20% deposit, you could have potentially doubled the initial capital that you started with if you hadn't bought into this area, 6 months ago. So it sounds really good on the surface. You can't always get these suburbs right, but success leaves clues. And I think Warnbro in itself has a little bit further to run. Don't get too hyped up in this market and go and overpay by 10%, only to realize that the market's then going to catch you up over the next 6 months. But look, I think the market there has still some time to run, because if you have a look at the price compared to the eastern coast, it is cheap. Like, all these areas are cheap. But when you look at the surrounding suburbs, Warnbro is kind of like the poor baby brother of like Port Kennedy, of Secret Harbour. Golden Bay is a little bit cheaper, but look, there is a reason why this suburb is cheaper. I'm not going to go into the details, and you can see it's not a very big suburb at that. But if you see a suburb that looks like it's booming, or it is booming, generally speaking, the surrounding suburbs will boom as well. But you get what's called this ripple effect, where different suburbs will experience different growth. And then as they move through that growth cycle, what normally happens is the surrounding suburbs end up growing as well. And normally one suburb will boom before the other ones catch on. So you can kind of see Warnbro is a cheaper baby brother to Port Kennedy and further south. But when you look at, this suburb to the north, this one to the north, these ones are starting to get cheaper again. But then you have a look at the Bayside suburbs, they're a little bit more expensive. So, it looks cheaper. It is cheaper by comparison, but then you got to deep dive a little bit further and have a look at, why, what are the reasons that it's cheaper? It's further away from the city than, say, this suburb up here. Why not jump into this suburb? And, this one, the statistics of Warnbro at this point in time, or at the point in time, 6 months ago, all looked really good to buy into that area. And I'm going to show you a couple of properties, just analyze those properties quickly and sort of give you my 2 cents worth, where I think there's still value left in this suburb and some other adjoining suburbs. But I think there's some better suburbs closer to the CBD in Perth that are right for the picking at the moment, but I'll do those in a separate video. So let's just jump into the typical realestate.com where everybody looks. And I'm just gone Warnbro and Port Kennedy, which is the more expensive neighboring suburb to the south, which I just showed you. So one key ingredient to capital growth, and it's not the be all and end all, but it is a very significant ingredient, is developers pouring money into suburbs and then having those suburbs grow in value because they go through what's called a gentrification. So it's suburb in transition. If you get in at the right timing, right at the start of that transition, you normally ride out that capital growth wave. And this is part of what's happened as well. So you get that ripple effect from Port Kennedy in a way. So when you have a look at these new townhouses selling for $694,000, they're only 3-bedroom. You know, this estate looks really nice. It's new. It's by the water. People pay more money for new stuff. It's kind of like a new car. You pay more money for a new car, but then when you drive it out of the showroom, it's worth $20,000 less if it's a luxury car or whatever that amount is. So same thing with these new properties. Developers will create these luxury new properties, or in this case, you know, there's affordable luxury by the bay, by the beach, which on the east coast of Australia, this is like incredibly cheap. And people that are buying in these areas from Sydney and Melbourne will be thinking the exact same thing. You know, these are nearly $700,000 to be next to the water. Now, I've never been to this area. I don't intend to. Maybe I will at some point. But whether you can swim in the water is another question. Can you walk along the beach? I have no idea. I've not been there, but it looks really nice. And that's more expensive. That's nearly $700,000 for a built 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage townhouse. So if you scroll down a little bit further, you can see there's some established homes in Warnbro. You can buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom for $650,000. Again, you got to look at where this is located in the suburb. What does the street look like? There's all these other secondary statistics that you need to look at, not just the initial data set that says, hey, this suburb is flying out the door. This one looked really affordable, $300,000 for this 3-bed, 1-bath. You know, that could be a good buy for somebody. Personally, I don't think that that's great because it's on a small block of land. It's part of a body corporate type arrangement. You know, it looks cheap on the surface, but what was this property worth, you know, a couple of years ago? You're near the beach, or at least that's what it looks to be. You know, have a look at some of these, $520,000. Like, these properties, again, are attractive to people because of the yield that they're getting. These properties for $500,000 are rented out for $600 plus per week. Now, I'm just speculating on this property because I've seen some other rentals in the area. It could be more than that. It could be less. You need to do your own research, obviously, and work out whether it's worth it. Like, this one's not even renovated, $500,000. It's under offer at the moment. So if you just scroll down, like, there's a lot of things that are under offer. This one, look, that's really cheap. It's under $400,000. So for the typical investor looking at these areas and seeing that you've got a yield of 5, 6, 7% plus in this area, you're going to be really attracted to it initially. Now, don't just bank everything off yield, but if you're chasing yield and you're chasing capital growth, I still think this market's got a little bit further to go. Now, the other big consideration is have a look at the pricing disparity. So what I mean by that is you can buy a $400,000 home in the same suburb as a $1.5 million home. Now, very different houses. This one's next to the water, but you can just tell from where it's positioned. Next to the water, it demands quite a bit more of a premium, and it's on a much larger block of land by the look of that. So if you just scroll through, you know, it's on over half an acre. Maybe that property can be split. The house looks quite substantial. But that pricing difference, you can literally buy a $400,000 home in the same suburb as you can buy one that's worth 3 or 4 times as much. Like, that to me is just crazy that you can buy a house so cheap in the same area as one that's so expensive. Now, I know there's other suburbs with the same thing where a house on the water is worth way more than a house on the opposite side of the street. Now, don't get me wrong about that. But the saying goes, you know, buy the worst house in the best street. And I truly believe that has grounds for some means, but you've got to do your own assessment. You know, what is the true value, or do you see value? Is there value for the market in buying a product at $400,000, a house that might be 3-bed, 2-bath at $400,000 you can rent out for $500-600, or are you going to be buying a $1.5 million house? You don't want to be buying the best house in the worst suburb. So me personally, I wouldn't be buying a $1.5 million house. to live in or to invest in when there's one around the corner that's worth 400,000. I'd be looking at the $400,000 one all day long. So this one does not look nice. 459,000 to me, that looks like somebody overpaid for it, from what I know about this area, and it needs a full renovation. So look, if you can go into these areas and get properties that are really good value, like this one, like that's only $100,000 more, but it just looks so much better than the one before. And maybe somebody bought this because of the land component, 700 square meters, it's on a much bigger block of land. Maybe they plan on splitting the block. So maybe there's a development play in that as well. And we're obviously not looking at the exact areas within this area as well. So this one's Port Kennedy. They both are Port Kennedy rather, not Warnbro. So, there could be good pockets of Port Kennedy, bad pockets. But as I've shown you, there's some expensive homes and then there's some cheaper homes. So what I like to do as well in a suburb, and I'm looking on realestate.com, and admittedly 95% of the properties that I've purchased have not been from realestate.com. They've been off market. They've either been through agents sparingly, but normally I'll go out and source them from people that specifically buy sites. So similar to buyer's agents, but keep in mind that there's a lot of buyer's agents that don't know what they're doing at the moment. But I'll source a lot of them through, buyers or site finders that'll come and bring me sites that look good to buy. So I buy very few properties on the market. And when you're in a market like this that's booming, let everybody else buy things on market. Let everybody else that's paying too much for the property buy things on market, and go and buy off market and buy it under market value, where you can do that, in my experience, every single time, because not everybody wants to sell to market. Owners don't always want to sell to the market. They don't want to have their house open every single weekend. They don't want to have it clean, random people walking through. People happily accept a lower price if it's easy for them. And also you get agents that will list properties and they don't know the real price of them, and so they undersell them in the market. So markets like these that are booming, generally what you're better off doing is buying a property that's off market, where you are buying it where the agent doesn't know the value, or you're buying it direct through the owner, and it's a good deal for them and it's a good deal for you, unless I was already in that game doing multiple. So I'm just going to go lowest to highest. I can see there's one for 300,000, like I mentioned before, one for 400, 415, 420. That one's around about the same price, 440. You can see they're all under offer. It's a hot market. This one's added 4 days ago. And again, we're starting to get a bit too expensive for what these properties are. Like, they're just a bit run down, tired, and old. So you need to make up your own assessment about what properties you are going to purchase. If you're going to be making such a significant investment decision, I personally suggest that you go and get educated and go and do your homework and your research, and don't just look at 5 or 10 properties and then expect to buy one, or just don't go off this video and expect that, the suburb will grow in value if I just buy blindfolded. It's not going to be the case. Have a look at some properties that have sold in the area and do your own analysis. So have a look at, I clicked on some other ones that had sold. This one sold for 830,000. It's probably too high a price to be an investment property. I personally wouldn't be buying an $800,000 property where I'm looking at $300,000-$400,000 properties in the same area as investments. This one sold for 540,000. Seems like a pretty expensive buy. It only just sold recently. It looks not very attractive at all from the front. So personally, that looks like they're way overpaid. Obviously, I haven't looked specifically at the area. You need to look at the area. Where is it located? So it's located, at the bottom of Port Kennedy. How far away from new development is that? Is that good value versus where the new development is? There's another one in Port Kennedy, 510,000. This one looks like it's a bit better than the last one. And look, looks like it's to be on the lake. So, is this pocket a better pocket than where we were just looking, which is further south near Port Kennedy Road? So that looks like a better house. What's the rental yield going to be? That's 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car. Then this one's 460,000. It's only 4-bed, 1-bath. So now you're in Warnbro. Where's this in comparison to, the lake? So you're near this lake again, sort of, but you're kind of closer to the beach. Is the beach going to demand more of a premium price? So, have a look at some of these comparables. Compare how many bathrooms, bedrooms, compare the streetscape. What does the street look like? What does the inside of the property look like? This one looks like it's been renovated. The outside looks terrible, but the inside looks like they've somewhat renovated it. Or I take that back, it definitely hasn't been renovated. And then, you can go to the sold page on realestate.com. All this information is free. If you want to get serious about buying properties and buying multiple, there are other platforms that you use, but I won't go into those. I'm just doing high level assessment on this. So, 620,000 for this one, 4-bed, 1-bath, 510,000, 4-bed, 2-bath. So you can see it's around the $500,000 for something that looks half decent. These ones look almost identical. This one, you get a pool for an extra 50 grand. So that one looks a bit nicer. So this one, low 500,000 in Port Kennedy. This one, 612,000. That's a 5-bedroom. So you're going to get more rental yield if it's a 5-bedroom, but now you're up around the $600,000. Is that going to be, too high for that investment grade? Are you going to be able to get a 7% yield on that? So have a look, do your own research, but I think this market has still got some legs left in it. I think it's still etching a little bit high for where it is in the market cycle. I think there's other better markets closer to the CBD personally, but I think if you bought in this area and you bought well, I don't think you're going to lose out over the short term. And Perth's market is going gangbusters at the moment, the rental yields. Perth's yields are incredibly attractive, and I think that over the short term, Perth is going to outperform many parts around Australia. And for that rental yield, it's obviously attracting a lot of investors into Perth, and I think it will continue to do so as interest rates remain high. So thanks for listening. I hope you've got some value out of this. I'm going to do some other suburbs and analyze where I think the market is going to go for those suburbs within Perth. So I'm going to put a link in this video, some of those markets that I think are going to boom and do the same thing that Warnbro has done over the last 6 months. So do that 10% growth, and I'll put that link in the video. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your day.